Welcome to Pod Revisited, episode 72. I'm Tori.
And I'm Shay.
Today we are covering chapter 12 of Goblet of Fire, the Triwizard Tournament.
Or as we like to call it, Funsies Fight to the Death.
So coming off from where we left off last chapter, they have arrived to Hogwarts and it's storming and thundering and just not great energy here. But you can't come back to school without, Peeves causing some mayhem. And so he's throwing water balloons at everyone coming in from the rain.
Classic mayhem, classic trouble, classic Peeves.
But going into the Great Hall and sitting down, we find out from Colin Creevey that his brother Dennis is starting Hogwarts this year. And I thought it was really interesting because you don't really see a Muggle-born student having a sibling also at the school, which I feel like must be really rare, having two magical kids in a Muggle family.
I don't know. I think there's a part of me that just assumed that maybe it sometimes lies dormant for a couple generations. If it would, in my mind, I know the only example I can think of where one is magic and one isn't would be Lily and Petunia. And I feel like Petunia, if she had ever showed signs of magical things, would repress it. So even if she wanted it, would somehow repress it.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's probably fairly common in my mind that one sibling has it, the other sibling has it. Dormant genetics or something. But I honestly kind of love Dennis. I don't think about Dennis very often. But I'm wow, I love him. He's just so excited. Even about falling in the lake in the pouring rain. He's I fell in the lake. Best time ever. Got rescued by a monster. Best time ever.
He kind of feels like a personification of how it would really be to go to Hogwarts. You'd obviously be pumped.
Yeah.
He's just all for it. Yeah, of course, having a squid touch you at this magic school. That's awesome.
The fact that the squid helped him out makes me so happy. I love a helpful cephalopod. It's what I live for.
But they also have this conversation just about kind of wizarding families, which I think is interesting in this book, because Colin wants him to be in Gryffindor, and he kind of looks at the Weasleys and being that's normal, right? But Hermione reminds us that Parvati's twin sister's in Ravenclaw, and it's also kind of reminding us that Parvati has a twin sister who comes in later.
Yeah, because we barely think about Parvati at all, let alone that she has a sibling.
Yeah, and then of course we have the Sorting Hat song. This is the first time Harry's actually been at a sorting since his own.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So we get a new song from the Sorting Hat.
It's another bop, real banger.
Yeah.
Top of the charts for sure.
Yeah, and Ron thinks that the Sorting Hat has a sad life, just making up songs in the off-season.
Yeah, I kind of wonder what the Sorting Hat's life is actually like, because he's clearly very intelligent. He comes up with the songs and it's cute, but he clearly knows a lot and he can read people well. And I wonder if he does other things, thinks on other things almost professionally in the off season, when he's not coming up with his sorting song and sorting students. I wonder if he
Well, he definitely picks up stuff because he lives in Dumbledore's office, and I think in Order of the Phoenix, where he has more of a politically minded song, they talk about he probably hears things in Dumbledore's office and kind of works it in.
You know what I think the Sorting Hat would be good at, given his skill set and how he sorts students? Being a hiring manager for a company. The ministry wants to hire someone for a specific position. They ask the Sorting Hat about the person, and he's well, I sorted them. I saw this and this. I think they're like this. They'll probably be like this, which does work for that position or doesn't work for that position. I feel he'd be very good in that type of consultation for the hiring or the placement of people in work positions. And I could see him doing that, in his downtime. Why not, right?
Dumbledore has to loan him out to the ministry. And during the sorting, there was just this fun moment where there was a kid that gets sorted into Ravenclaw, and Harry's describes himself having a strange desire to join the Ravenclaw table, and then he sees Cho, and he's just so down bad, and it's so cute.
But is he crying at the gym?
No, he saves that for Ginny, but it's just his first crush on Cho. It's just very sweet.
And someone gets sorted into Slytherin, and Fred and George hiss at them. And I'm just you guys are 16, and this is an 11-year-old child. Can you chill? It's a child. A human, just chill.
Yeah, it really shows the divide. And they're talking to Nearly Headless Nick, and he mentions that there is a ghost council, which I thought was fun. What did they talk about? Because the reason he gives is that they had a ghost council about Peeves because he's mad because he wanted to join the sorting in the feast, but of course he's not allowed to because he would throw food. And so he's all mad, and they're oh, we had a ghost council about it, but we decided he couldn't come.
I feel like the Ghost Council makes sense because the rules, like, they're not teachers, so they don't have to follow teacher rules, but they're obviously not students. Like, there has to be some rules of what ghosts can and can't do,
Yeah.
not just in regarding like at Hogwarts, but in general, there has to be rules. So I'm assuming there's like a couple ghosts that are more leadership oriented. Like, it sounds like the heads of houses, like the house ghosts, are a part of it. And like someone has to be in charge. Like, it's got to be hard for a wizard to reprimand a ghost for misbehaving.
I feel like, from what I get, I feel like the Bloody Baron's kind of like the one they kind of listen to. Like, he seems pretty, like, insistent. Because I think Ron brings up a point like, oh, you're scared of him. And he's like, I respect him.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting, though, because we had the Bloody Baron who murdered the ghost of Ravenclaw.
Drama. There's ghost drama. That's true, actually, because of the council. Like, they don't mention
Yeah.
Ravenclaw ghost being on the council, but like you'd think she would be. So like just like hanging out with the guy.
She could be so petty, and like every time he says something, she just like does the opposite, or just like or goes against him, and then he'll give her a look, and she's like, "You murdered me, so don't even look at me."
You unalived me. Your opinion is invalid. Thank you for coming out. At least someone, though, in defense of the Bloody Baron, not the murder bit, but as a ghost, he can control Peeves, and I don't think anyone else can at all. So I think at least they have that.
Yeah, even like when McGonagall earlier in the chapter, like she tries to tell him to like, go away and stop. And she'll get Dumbledore, and he's just kind of like, whatever, sticks his tongue out at her. So like, yeah, no one else can really control him.
He's a monster.
Nick reveals that what Peeves caused like a commotion getting ready in the kitchens, getting ready for the meal, and reveals that there are house elves at Hogwarts that work in the kitchens. And Hermione is just like absolutely floored about this. She's mortified.
Yeah.
And I feel like it kind of goes back to Hermione kind of like having her morality tested and going through it, this book, where she always sees Dumbledore and Hogwarts as like the good. Like, it's a good place, and finding out that it like actually has slaves that, in her opinion, running school, she's just like it completely like shatters her.
Yeah.
Like, she refuses to eat.
It's definitely that stage in life where you start to learn that things aren't just a dichotomy of good and evil, and it does take time to realize a good place can do bad things or support bad things.
Yeah.
Poor Hermione, she's going through it. But like, honestly, bless her heart, she's not just asking if the house elves are paid. She wants to know if they get vacation time, sick leave, pensions. First of all, she's like 14 years old and she's concerned about pensions. Good for her. Savvy, smart lady, knows things. But also, like, she doesn't just care that they're getting paid. She actually cares about the overall well-being of the house elves. Like, overall, she's just not the one concept. Like, she's really thought about it as a whole broad concept to think about all the things she thinks employees should be offered and how the house elves deserve all of those things. Like, it's really impressive of her, but also, like, says a lot about her as a person. Everyone else just sort of swept over the house elf thing so quickly.
Yeah, Ron's just like whatever, And like everyone keeps telling her like, oh, they're happy this way, and she's like, but that doesn't mean it's right.
We don't know that. I mean, we tell ourselves they're happy this way, and they're told this is what makes them happy. But is that the truth? Maybe it's not.
Yes, Ron keeps bringing food over to her to get her to eat.
Yeah, he's trying to tempt her to eat food, and one of the options is spotted dick, which I know is a British food thing, but yikes. And I kind of wonder if the US version of this book censored that, because you don't read spotted dick and think, oh, that's a food. You laugh.
I feel like dick as like a word is more used in North America here. I feel like they use something else in the UK. So the people in the UK, they don't think about that. They're just like, oh yeah, that's the pudding.
But the US loves censorship. So I wonder if they like switched it to like, would you like a pudding?
We should look up and see if they've changed it or not.
You don't know what a philosopher is, and you don't know what a spotted dick is. So you have to have a slightly different book.
But when Dumbledore gives his, opening speech to the school, he talks about how Filch has, a list of all of the banned items that are there, but he makes kind of a joke about it. And I'm just like, this guy just loves to gaslight Filch every year.
He makes Filch do terrible things. And then when Filch tries to make his own life easier by, making rules, Dumbledore's like, ha!
If you want to see the full list of items, they're at his office, but I'm not going to tell you, because,
I mean, it's a long list.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the tournament a bit later, but obviously Dumbledore announces the tournament. But before this, he says that the Quidditch season has been cancelled. And I find it really funny because if Dumbledore waited until Oliver was gone because he knew that he couldn't cancel Quidditch with Oliver there.
Honestly, if Quidditch had been cancelled when Oliver Wood was at Hogwarts, he would have killed Dumbledore.
Yeah.
It would have saved Voldemort and Severus a lot of time and energy He would have absolutely killed Dumbledore. And I believe he can do it. I also think regarding Quidditch being canceled, it's kind of sad because like the tournament lets one student from the whole school participate, as opposed to Quidditch, which is like 13 students per house get to participate on the team. It's a bit sad that the kids who need that for exercise and for fun and it's their favorite thing miss out. Like, I think in my mind, you can do both, except if you happen to be the champion, then maybe you can't play Quidditch that year.
Kind of plays into the idea that like teachers do a lot of like things for school that aren't like really part of their job. Like their job is teach, but it's like real teachers do a lot of like unpaid time to like run extracurriculars on like their own time. And like the reason they say that they can't do it is because the teachers will be too busy with this other thing. And it kind of shows that like, yeah, it's kind of sad that like, especially if people that really wanted to like join the house team this year.
Or even worse, people whose last year is this year, it's their last chance to play Quidditch and they haven't won it, you know?
Yeah, because Oliver was like really wanting to win that cup before he graduated, and like thank God. We also get introduced to Mad Eye Moody this chapter in like the most chaotic way possible, like mid speech, thunderclaps, and bursts in Mad Eye Moody.
He's a dramatic bitch. I mean, technically, this isn't Mad Eye Moody, but this guy is a dramatic bitch.
He's described so interestingly. Like he obviously he sounds so scary looking, but we obviously know he's supposed to be like a good guy.
But he's a scary guy as a good guy. Like, he's gruff, you know?
Yeah. Like the descriptions of just like his face, and obviously he has a peg leg, and then he has the like the magical eye, and like part of his nose is missing, and it's just like it's a very almost villainous kind of description.
Absolutely. I think that the author gave Moody big pirate energy. And not just like the peg leg, but his overall vibe. Like, the mechanical eye has sort of it's indicative of like eye patches,
Yeah.
and his clothes sound kind of raggedy, and the fact that he's like drinking from his flask, kind of pirate energy. And I feel like maybe the author wanted us to start thinking that auras are cool, to start priming us for that being what Harry wants. And she's like, what does everyone think is cool? Like, what's one thing that's cool to everyone? Pirates. People love pirates. I'm going to give him pirate energy so people are like, he's swashbuckling, he's cool, he's gruff, he's tough.
Well, yeah, pirates are generally like rogues and they don't really follow rules, which we kind of see with Moody, even though it's not really him. But like Moody is that kind of guy where he doesn't follow like what he's supposed to do. He does what he wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we hear about Triwizard Tournament. We'll discuss that a little bit later. But heading back up, they're all talking about if they're going to enter or not, and Fred and George are kind of like conspiring how they're going to like enter even though they're underage. And poor Neville has this little clip about like oh how his grandma would want him to enter. He talks about how she's always going on about the family honor. And I'm like, can this grandma let this sweet boy live? Like he's obviously like he's just so sweet and he wants to do best by his family, but he's just it's very obvious how he knows that she's let down his grandma.
Wait a minute, his grandma's obsessed with family honor. Is Prince Zuko Neville's grandmother? Headcanon.
And he's like talking about this, and it's obviously kind of a harrowing thing, and he falls into the trick step, and Ron has to help pull him up.
Sweet, sweet Ron is telling off the armor for laughing at Neville because Ron is a sweet boy.
Yeah. When they're getting ready for bed, Ron's kind of talking to Harry about, like, what do you think about entering? Like, it'd be kind of fun, don't you think? And Harry actually has a dream about entering. So it's kind of interesting, the foreshadowing of Ron's comment to Harry about entering, and that's kind of what causes, like, this rift between them. Like, obviously, it's a lot more stuff than just this tournament, but it's kind of hinting that, like, this tournament's going to be, like, a pretty big thing.
Yeah.
Also fortunate that Harry's going to be involved in it.
Harry's always involved in things. I think it's interesting that, like, he actually wants this. Like, I understand, like, he's a Gryffindor and it's dramatic and it's exciting, but, like, doesn't he have enough dramatic and exciting? Like, every year he basically has a huge thing to overcome.
It plays into a lot of things because part of his dream is, like, he wants, like, everyone paying attention to him and also Cho paying attention to him. And like, I think it's more about, like, the attention for something that's not related to Voldemort or whatever. Like it's like it's a choice for him to enter, but then obviously he doesn't get the choice down the line.
I see. Yeah, so it's basically like I don't want people to think I'm only that kid that has Voldemort problems. I want people to think that I am also other things. And because everyone knows him so much for the Voldemort thing, he feels like to be more than that, he needs to do big things on a big stage that doesn't involve Voldemort. I can see that now. That makes sense.
Yeah, but moving into the Triwizard Tournament. So they mentioned that like this started that because Hogwarts, Beauxbatons, and Durmstrang were the three largest wizarding schools in Europe. I don't know if that's still the same now, but it was like an inter-school tournament just for the three largest schools in Europe.
That's fun. I like the idea of having that because I always sort of wondered why Quidditch was only amongst the houses in the school. They weren't like playing other schools. So it's nice to see that there is a thing that exists where other schools interact like this.
Yeah, so we get from Dumbledore that anyone under 17 can't enter. So you have to be 17 to enter, is the whole rules of the tournament this year, which Fred and George are very mad about.
So the idea is introduced, and some people think it's dangerous. Most of the kids think it's fun, but Fred comes in with the ultimate Gryffindor motto: "Where's the fun without a bit of risk?"
I do think it's interesting, like how gun ho Fred and George were about it, especially when they mentioned like the prize money.
Yeah.
Because Fred and George are actually pretty ambitious, and they're just like, this is what we need to get our plans into fruition.
I do think that having an age restriction for the tournament is a very good idea because the idea that like an 11-year-old could get chosen is terrifying.
Yeah.
But I also think 17 still feels so young to like decide to risk your life just for like funsies and glory.
Well, you think about it, 17 is their age where they're a legal adult.
I mean, I guess.
That's their choice. Like, it does obviously seem super young, but the whole thing is that, like, ideally, they'll be in their seventh year. And the whole thing is that, like, well, you're 17, so you can commit to it.
It still feels pretty crazy to do like without parental permission. And like their prefrontal cortexes have not fully formed. Like that doesn't happen until 25. So it seems just still a bit young to be making that kind of life choice on short notice. Like this is basically September. They have a month to decide if they want to risk their life for glory and money. That seems like a questionable choice. I think that like age shouldn't be the only restriction. You should have to make sure the people who actually submit their names to the deciding judges are like actually capable of surviving this. Like I think there should maybe be some sort of practical written tests.
Well, I think there's the idea that when they put their names on it, the Goblet of Fire kind of is able to identify if like they're the right person for it, because it's supposed to choose the best person from each school.
I guess, but I just feel like it feels like there should be a practical or written test just to prove there are certain skills you have that will be necessary. Like, can you heal yourself while in a bit of pain? I think is really important in a situation like this before you go into it. Also, I think there are like safer alternatives that would get a similar sense of camaraderie among students and competition between schools. Like, I think like, what if they had one teacher from each school participate, and then the students could all rally behind and cheer for their teacher, but it's not like a young teen risking their whole life. Like in my mind, Minnie G would kill it.
Obviously.
They'd send like the biggest, gruffest man from Durmstrang, and she would just annihilate him. She'd win half the tournament as cat, like just as a cat. She'd be like, doo doo doo. Like I would just love that. And it would be like safer and someone who's old enough to actually consent to maybe dying in that sort of situation.
I think the whole idea to it is like it's just like the chaotic idea of it that you're risking your life, and I guess all wizards are just like into that. I don't know.
I mean, like it's very Gryffindor appealing.
Yeah, like we always see all the Gryffindors being like, "Yeah, this is amazing," and Hermione's just like people have died.
Yeah, like the Gryffindors are all on board, and we know at least one Hufflepuff is on board. But I want to know what the Slytherins are ambitious, but they're also not stupid. So you got to think there's a couple that are kind of like, nope, that's not for me. Thank you very much.
No, I think the Slytherins are more interested into just like having a betting pool about who's gonna like lose or win.
And you got to think the Ravenclaws are like, what is the risk benefit? Like they're doing like risk benefit cost analysis, because the Gryffindors are on board real quick, and that's terrifying.
I think it's like the tournament wasn't intended to be like overly dangerous.
But I mean, in reality, it's basically a school/government sanctioned for funsies fight to the death.
Yeah, Hunger Games-esque.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Also, the moment this was announced, Madame Pomfrey should have quit.
Oh, yeah.
Just like walked out and been like, nope.
I wonder if Dumbledore told her beforehand, or she just found out like from this like meeting if she goes to like the dinners, and then she's just be like, I am writing my resignation right now.
So I have a theory. I always have theories. This is a Dumbledore's evil theory. Obviously, Dumbledore is a smart guy. He might be an asshole, but he's a smart guy. So he knows that people form strong bonds when they go through trauma.
Together, yes.
So he definitely wants the Hogwarts students to cheer for one person and build that sense of camaraderie. But also, when something terrible happens, and they all watch it happen, the students are going to trauma bond. So I think he's sort of partially bringing this tournament back as a way of manipulating the students into feeling more unity and closeness. To some extent, he's prepping them for a war.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like, not everyone here loves me, not everyone else here loves each other, but if I can get them to feel like they're one entity together, one team, I don't have to manipulate all of them. I have to manipulate enough of them that the rest will go along because of the sense of attachment.
Yeah, it does feel very interesting that after the events from the end of the last book, where Voldemort would get his servant back, Dumbledore's like, you know what the best thing would be to do is to have the Triwizard Tournament and get these other schools here right before Voldemort is obviously planning something. And it just feels very targeted.
Yeah, he literally was like, I want all of my students to be on the same team, which is my team. But right now, I have 4 houses that are competing against each other and not with each other. So the only solution is to bring in and introduce new opposition, new enemies, new foes, so that they can stop seeing each other as the enemies and the foes, and I can manipulate my one big group.
And he also gets Karkaroff like really close to him under his nose, and also Madame Maxime, who he probably wants to build alliances with.
Because she's tall and can put the star on top of the Christmas tree. So
yeah, well, you know, like he sends her and Hagrid to go to the Giants, so I feel like he's already like playing chess with everyone, being like, how can I use these people in this tournament?
It's just such a cult leader energy to try and like provide people with an enemy, provide yourself as like the savior. He's like, I brought this thing. You are my students. And he's literally, and you know it's going to be traumatizing. They say students die all the time in this tournament. And they're like, we've made it safer. But like 100%, even if people don't die, the viewers are going to see traumatizing things happen to the person they've all rallied behind and put all their emotional energy into and are cheering for. And it's the only person they're cheering for in a public forum because he canceled the other sport.
Yep.
So like all of the energy and the basking in reflective glory and like psychological and sociological needs people get from watching sports or team activities goes into this one thing. And it's incredibly manipulative. And like, I think this was intentional. I think that's what he's doing. I think that's why he brought the tournament back.
Which is interesting because Voldemort uses the tournament against him, but maybe Dumbledore wanted him to use the tournament.
I don't know if Dumbledore wanted that. I think Dumbledore's plan was this. The fact that Voldemort was the reason the students ended up being traumatized in the end was just a twist, but I think he would have found other ways to traumatize them for the trauma bonding if Voldemort had not shown up.
Well, do you have any other thoughts before we wrap up?
My first thought is, I get a question. Would you have entered the Triwizard Tournament if you were 17?
Hell no.
I think I would have entered, but known I wasn't getting chosen. Like, there's no way in hell I am the chosen one. If there's any sense of, like, logic to it, it's not me. But I want to pretend, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, I could, you know, the excitement of, like, maybe it'll be me, knowing it won't be me. I just think, like, the idea of how exciting being the chosen one in the tournament would be so tempting. The glory, you know? And even if you don't, like, do the best, the idea that everyone in the school is cheering for you, you know? That would be wonderful.
I feel like that's too much pressure for me, especially as a teenager. Like, I didn't want to draw attention to myself.
Oh, I mean, I would throw up nonstop, for sure. But I think 17-year-old me, nervous and frightened as she was, would totally enter knowing she wouldn't be chosen. Just to, like, be part of the group of people writing my name and putting it in there.
Yeah, I definitely would. I wouldn't even do it now.
It'd be exciting enough to put my name in. That would be all the excitement I need out of it. Like, I put my name in, that was hype, done, I'm out, that's it.
I think my favorite things from this chapter are definitely just being introduced to Eye Moody and his description and everything. And yeah, and it's just mostly just a lot of foreshadowing these last 2 chapters about setting up this tournament and how it's going to affect the rest of the book.
Yeah, I like the idea of a Triwizard Tournament, not practically, but like for the drama of it.
I think it's a good narrative choice too, having like 3 separate events and like a certain amount of people to kind of go through the school year. I feel like it works really well for a novel.
And it's funny because the other novels sort of happen much more naturally. Like all the storyline and the plot like occurs. Like this is like, it almost feels like the author was like, I don't know what to write. I have to like, I'll just put a big thing in and that can be the plot. It's not like the plot unfolded naturally. She like invented this plot point and she's like, I'll write the book around this thing.
Yeah, usually things are happening during their school year that lead to Voldemort. But this is just like a thing that's kind of introduced and that ends up leading into Voldemort.
Yeah. It's a different way of writing the book, I think. Like it's very different from all the other novels. It's like this is the one thing up front and center. This is what's happening this year. This is the main plot point.
Especially because we know from the first chapter that was written from Voldemort, or from Frank's point of view, that Voldemort's going to use this in some way to kill Harry. So we already are kind of in on like the plot.
Exactly, because like again, Harry Potter's are all kind of a mystery novel to some extent, and this one's different because usually the mystery is what's going to happen and who's going to do it. And this time it's like we know what's going to happen, kind of.
We just don't know how.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting. It's different.
We're in on the plot right now.
The formula is different in this one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Potter Revisited, and we'll be back next time to discuss Chapter 13 of Goblet of Fire, Mad Eye Moody. You can reach us at social media at Potter Revisited, or email us at potterrevisitedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will see you next time.
Bye.